tourism industry is struggling to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. International and local lockdowns hit the sector hard. And despite borders slowly reopening, many airports and airlines are grappling to return to pre-COVID operations. The Industrial Development Corporation, SA Tourism, and the Tourism Business Council of SA have joined forces to launch a campaign to stimulate recovery. For more on this initiative, I'm joined by Moseketsi Mpeta, Head of Tourism and Services at the IDC. Very good evening to you. Thank you for your time. We are seeing the impact of COVID-19 when it comes to the aviation industry, and of course looking at mango and looking at Kome, of course showing and pointing to a very serious cash injection that's needed to assist this industry. Talk to us about how you've joined forces and what differences you're hoping to make.
Thanks so much, Paul, for having me. So I think as the IDC, as a starting point, I think we have been a stakeholder in the tourism industry, and we quite invested heavily in the sector. We have a number of establishments that we have funded, with the exposure sitting at around 6 billion, plus minus 6 billion. So I think for us, we saw, I think with everybody else, I think the impact that COVID I think had on the sector. And I think to pay your introduction, as you mentioned, that maybe the restrictions as far as COVID is concerned are sort of easing down, but then again we have also other challenges. I think with regards to, I think you mentioned the airlines, but I think just the economic pressures that we're seeing, I think not just in South Africa but across the world. So for us, I think it's really to say, how do we come together as the key industry players to try and stimulate, the demand, the domestic travel demand, I think, into the sector. And hence, I think, we then came up with this initiative to say, let's try and, invite all South Africans to register and stand the chance to win the vouchers that will then allow them to book a travel at any destination within South Africa. So the travel package, can be for the family. It can be a self-drive, you can fly, so it can include, just accommodation, flights, and car rental. So it's really a call for us to say we're offering, this discount of up to 35%, kept at a maximum of 2,500, I think, to the winning travelers. So we have put together a platform, interested travelers can register on saishome.co.za, and we have daily draws that will be happening where lucky travelers stand a chance to win a voucher.
The travel package is only just one solution to a much bigger problem. 438,000 jobs have been lost, and of course it shows to a 75% revenue reduction, which impacts those jobs. When it comes to recreating jobs and perhaps opening up more opportunities, how are you helping?
Yeah, so I think we believe this is the starting point, because I think for the sector to be able to bring back, I think the many staff, the numbers that you mentioned, that some were laid off and some were retrenched, for them to be able to then have the cash to be able to bring them back and for those jobs to then be restored. For us, we believe that, the starting point is to make sure that, we start getting the bumps in beds, and that can, essentially happen by people, starting to travel. I mean, we have seen, I think, just the transition, I think that happened overnight where, we all switched to the, the virtual communication in terms of conferencing and so on. So, all of these, challenges have an impact, because we have infrastructure that has been built, infrastructure that's created for us to have the conferencing and to be able to engage. But now I think, the world as we know it has slightly changed. So it's really to then say to people, let's go all out. I think the restrictions have been lifted. Let's go and support the sectors, because it's only when the establishments, I think, have additional revenue that they can start bringing back the jobs, I think, that have been lost. And certainly, I think, in addition, I think for IDC in particular, we've walked the journey, I think, with a lot of our clients. I think since the onset of COVID, where we've sort of granted a lot of them, I think the deferments were needed because we understood that I think the businesses were, essentially shut down, overnight. And yeah, we are seeing the improvement, I think, in the numbers, but we still think that, it's a bit of a long road, I think, till we get to the pre-COVID levels.
Some solutions that have come from those within the space in tourism and travel have made suggestions of perhaps saying that it's time to think more out of the box and try and really make a major impact in stimulating the economy with tourism, because we know that tourism had a major effect, when it comes to stimulating the economy. Suggestions like waiving visas for certain markets and creating special visas that now attracts visitors from outside, from further afield, to want to come to South Africa and stay longer and continue to come to the country. What strides have you made in perhaps exploring such an idea when it comes to making South Africa attractive for tourists to come and stay and continue to come like they did previously?
Yeah, so I think for some of the challenges that you're mentioning, I think it's part really of a larger, I think, a stakeholder engagement.
Yeah.
I think that is happening, with the various, sector stakeholders. So the engagement is happening, but I think the challenge maybe in this particular period that we faced with Mpho is that I think, all of us, because COVID affected, the entire world. So all the countries across the globe, I think we all trying to rebuild. We all now fighting for the same tourists, I think, to come to our markets. And I think we've seen, like, the countries, the countries like, well, particularly in Europe, I think, as an example, to say, once I think the COVID started getting better, people started traveling, I think, within the region. So for us as well, I mean, we did have a bit of a trouble that happened, whilst the borders were closed, while people were still not, comfortable, I think, to travel, I think, outside of the country. But I think the lesson for us, not just as IDC, but I think of the entire sector is how important, I think, the domestic market is. Because we have seen, I think, in previous periods where maybe we've had maybe things like your Ebolas and so on that will sort of impact, I think, travel, I think, into South Africa and Africa in particular. But I think here the focus, hence the focus of this campaign is really to try and say, you know what, I think we need to start looking at our domestic market, because the rest, when we have, disasters like we had with COVID, it then becomes sort of difficult for people to be able to travel. So the issues of visas, those are the continuing conversations that I think we're having as a sector. But I think more importantly, it's also, us, maybe even before we look at the international world, we also start looking at, even the regional travel, where we're now trying to sort of collaborate, I think, as a region to say, how do we then get tourists, I think, to travel to South Africa, to other neighboring countries. And because we believe that, I think, there's sort of enough travel spent, I think, just even within the region.
In stimulating the domestic market and launching this travel campaign, where would you say, for those who may be watching at home and thinking, yeah, perhaps traveling in South Africa may not be such a bad idea, where to? Yeah, no,
I think for majority of us, and especially maybe for people that are sort of privileged, that, normal for them was maybe taking holidays overseas. I think COVID, almost forced all of us, I think, to, start, exploring, travel domestically. So this campaign, is trying to reach every breadth, I think, of the country. Hence, I think we partnered with the SA Tourism, because I think also of their wide reach and the network base, because we're trying to make this as inclusive as possible. So it's not just limited to the support to the IDC funded establishments, but we're saying every registered tourism business that's operating within the borders of South Africa, we're inviting them to be part of this campaign. We've sent out a whole mailer, I think, to the industry with the support of our partners, TVCSA and SAT, where we essentially, I think, inviting everyone, because we know people, we want it to be, accessible to everyone, because we believe that I think once the numbers, are up and people are starting to travel, then we believe that I think that will really be a good sign, I think, of recovery for us as a sector.
What
and
opportunities,
we certainly, I think,
if you'll allow me to interrupt you, sorry for the sake of time, what opportunities do you think are open at this very point in time, looking at the state of the economy and looking at the unemployment rate, to young entrepreneurs, to start up businesses who may be thinking there's a gap to be filled in the tourism industry?
Yeah. So tourism, I think is one of those sectors, and again, depending on where you want to play it, where, we believe that, the barriers to entry are quite low. So, I mean, we've seen, some of our clients that you find maybe they are in the sort of your semi-rural, maybe your game lodges, as an example, where maybe they will have a youth that will sort of be able to provide them with some sort of services. So I think that there's a lot, I think, that can be done, besides the bricks and mortar. So we always, I think, inviting the youth, always inviting our clients to say, try and empower, I think, the communities that you work in, where, things like, your laundry, your basic things that can be done, I think, within the community, to say they don't necessarily have to be done, I think, by the big corporates, because, once you empower, I think, the people that you work with, I think that's where then we actually make the big impact in terms of the economic empowerment.
Very well. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Joined there by Moseketsi Mpeta, Head of Tourism and Services at the IDC.